Let me just say as a starting point, I'm really surprised personally to find myself increasingly in Christian spaces and gravitating towards Christian spaces. And part of the reason for that is because I was raised, I think it's fair to say, in a completely secular environment. My dad was an atheist. I would say my dad was a naturalist. I think my mom hadn't put much thought into it, but the result is I was just sort of raised in an environment which didn't really have much concrete contact to Christianity when I was growing up. And in many ways, when I encountered Christians, perhaps later in my life, in my teenage years, it even kind of felt like the Christian culture and the explicit Christian community was kind of alien or foreign to me as a result of that, like encountering almost like an anthropologist going into another culture. And I think, long story short, at the same time, I've had a very intimate connection to Christianity in terms of my intellectual journey, because my intellectual journey really started by meeting a Christian man at a family cottage, where he was sort of provoking me with ideas about intelligent design and giving me books about intelligent design to read, which I did and got into and learned about. But then noticed again that they were constantly pointing out the negation with the work of Darwin and evolutionary theory. And so I went to check that out. And long story short, went down a long rabbit hole with evolution, and even ended up doing an undergraduate in evolutionary anthropology and biology. And so really became fascinated with and really blown away by the evolutionary worldview and that way of seeing things. And for a long time, really dedicated myself to that path before sort of coming to a ideology internal to evolution, which orbited what you could call transhumanist thinking. And what kind of operated like a short circuit internal to the evolutionary worldview with the transhumanist way of thinking is that I saw a lot of actual Christian eschatological themes coming up unconsciously, I think, among the transhumanists. And so I got a little bit of a reflective distance in that experience towards both evolution and transhumanism, and almost forced myself, or that situation forced me into philosophy. So the more I became interested in philosophy, the more I became interested in questioning the presuppositions of basically thought systems in general. I became interested in the nature of thought itself. And increasingly, as that path has unfolded, long story short, after my doctorate in an interdisciplinary studies environment, where I was actually doing a doctorate on the intersections between evolution and transhumanism, I started a platform called Philosophy Portal, which is dedicated towards teaching philosophy. And the more that platform has unfolded, and the more I think the cultural moment we're in has unfolded, have become more interested in understanding the relationship also between philosophy and theology. And so the course I'm teaching right now, titled Christian Atheism, is very much inspired by the work of Slavoj Žižek, of course. It's very much also inspired by the work of Peter Rollins, like you mentioned. And I've been collaborating with Peter Rollins for the last few years now, and definitely find myself at home in the type of environments that he's creating. The idea of Christian atheism is basically to create a bridge and inseparability almost between the terms Christianity and atheism. And I think it actually makes both concepts more robust. That usually we hold Christianity and atheism separate, apart, like I think, we saw in basically all discussions with Richard Dawkins. The nature of atheism is held as separate from Christianity as opposed to integral to Christianity. And then also, on the other hand, you can also see many Christian pastors or theologians or people in that sphere treating atheism as an external opposite, as if it's an enemy or an other to Christianity. And I think Christian atheism is trying to get at the idea actually that there's a unique form of atheism that emerges internal to Christianity historically and metaphysically. And that form of atheism, as well as its relationship to Christianity, doesn't get too much intellectual discussion or airtime, so to speak. And I think that it actually can be a concept that helps us host conversation craft like you're doing, that hopefully elevates the cultural discourse as a whole. And that's sort of my aim at the moment.
Well, I'm glad to be part of that, because on an emotional level, which is something we also were talking about backstage, we were both young men in the new atheism, the peak beginnings of YouTubes and debates. For me, from as a Christian side, I think for you, you were animated as on the atheist side. It was very intense. The whole thing just was, it almost reminds me of how politics are today. And that for many people on that intensity, but for me back then, it was so emotional. And I looked at like the arguments. I was like, well, even if they're right, I don't know if I want to be a part of this, like whatever this vision is, and that's not an intellectual statement, but it's true. It was a true feeling that I had. And as a result, as I saw dialogue and conversation open up on the internet circa 15, 16, even, these people, a lot of it was more, kind of the intellectual dark web, honestly. Are you familiar with that term?
Yeah. Like
When
Peterson, Harris,
yes,
Rubin.
That whole thing was like, this is an evolution of the debates. There's something else, because now they're actually coming together on, even if it's this idea of speech, that was kind of the undertone. It was like, yes. So it was like nothing. No one would give on any level. And it was very disheartening, I think. And so for at least if you're a person that appreciates synthesis on some level, and so, yeah, that's baked into where I come from, and wanting to meet and have conversations, a kind of across certain boundaries that, because, and looking for those places of overlap or synthesis in a way, because I think we are in a cultural moment of synthesis as well. But, so what are some examples? Like, let's unpack, I guess, Christian atheism. I guess we can just jump right there. That seems like you were kind of aimed at. So let's just go deeper on that. And what you're saying is, you talked about a bridge. You talked about a different framework, really, for these things together. Hi, this is Christian Baxter, and you're listening to Yours Truly, a place we go to think out loud.